The FBI is now looking into as many as 20 or more other people who may have corresponded with this assassin beforehand. There may have been foreknowledge of the shooting. If there are co-conspirators here, what kind of threat level are we talking about?
Well, we don't know, Jesse, and that's why I've been so proud of Cash and the way that he's handled this investigation, because he's cast as wide a net as humanly possible, and the FBI really is looking at everything. By the way, there's a lot of weird stuff out there. For example, the CEO of Discord, or one of the leaders of Discord, said that there were no Discord chats that involved this guy. Now we know that there were Discord chats that involved this guy.
So everybody's out here protecting this guy. If y'all don't know who Cash is, he's actually Cash Patel. He's the head of the FBI. And he's sharp. He's sharp. Let's keep watching.
Look at everything. We need to leave no stone unturned. My own attitude to this, and people will send me stuff, Jesse, from the deepest, darkest corners of the internet. Some of it sounds pretty crazy, but I'll send it to Cash and I'll talk to my team because I want us to leave no stone unturned. It's the only way to honor Charlie is to get to the bottom of exactly how this person was radicalized and who else was involved in it. Now, we could find out that this person was radicalized and it was terrible and there were a lot of very evil people in his life, but they didn't have foreknowledge.
Right.
We may find out that there were many, many people who were involved in helping this guy pull off this shooting. We just have to get to the bottom of it. That's what justice demands. That's what being a good friend to Charlie demands.
The militant transgender movement, is that a domestic terrorist threat?
If you are encouraging people to commit acts of violence against the United States government or against your fellow Americans, absolutely, you're involved in a terrorist movement. I don't know enough about that particular organization, but what you increasingly see, Jesse, is you see people in the trans community and other members of the far left who are saying they are so threatened by negative rhetoric that they must take arms and attack people.
Hold on. Let me comment on that. Ain't it strange how, so many people, and I'm talking about lefties, Democrats, liberals, whatever you want to call them, how they feel so threatened by Charlie Kirks' statements and so forth. And that's the first thing they bring up to you when, somebody who disagreed with him, they tell you things like, look what he said. He said this about this group, and he said that about that group. He said this, and he said that. But these very same people, right, have said everything bad about Donald Trump. Think about it. Think about it. They've said so many bad things about Donald Trump. But at the same time, it's like they're excusing one thing, right, but condemning the next. They've said so many awful things. People actually wish death on Donald Trump. I'm talking about lefties, Democrats, the Democratic followers, liberals, but they have an issue with Charlie Kirk and his statements. I just don't understand it. People are filled with double standards. No matter how much they want to twist and turn it, it's double standard. You want to say this about that person, you want to say that about that person, you want to say this and that, but as soon as somebody says something that you don't agree with, it's a problem. It's an issue. Ain't that a bitch?
Your movement is telling you to commit acts of violence against people for speaking words that you don't like. Number one, you're evil. And number two, you are engaged in a terrorist movement. And that's part of what we have to root out in the White House. And this is very important, Jesse. I've talked to a lot of people about this. I've talked to Stephen Miller probably 7 times in the past 2 days. We are working very hard to ensure that the funding networks for left-wing violence, that the radicalization networks for left-wing violence, that if you encourage or fund your fellow Americans or anybody else to commit acts of violence because you disagree with political speech, you are going to be treated like a terrorist organization, and we're going to go after you.
As you should be treated. As you should be treated. I was talking to somebody, and I've seen this on my videos at the same time. Matter of fact, speaking about my videos, I did say in my announcements, I will be talking about politics in my trending topics. I did say that, but I want to say this. I remember a few people, I made a comment about Charlie Kirk when he died, and somebody said, a few people, as a matter of fact, said, so what about January 6th? You know, we didn't see y'all. Look, January 6th was January 6th, and I condemned that. You know, YouTube wasn't really, I didn't have this type of channel to really speak out. TikTok wasn't popping back then like that. It was just up and coming. I was never a supporter of January 6th, of what happened at Capitol Hill. Look, I condemned January 6th. I was not with that. Because when I saw what was happening, I was like, where all these nationalists, you know, so-called nationalists came from. And, you know, at the same time, two wrongs does not make it right. You know, you can't sit here and say, well, Charlie Kirk deserved this and that and that. But what if it happens to somebody you knew? What if it happened to you? People got to understand, man, there's a thing called karma, and it will come back around. Now, if you want to think that, you know, that's what came back and hit Charlie Kirk, it was karma, you don't want karma to be now visiting you at your doorsteps because of what you're saying about Charlie Kirk, mocking his death. I see people getting fired from their jobs, great jobs, from people getting expelled from schools. And I'm going to play those videos in my next video, getting expelled from school for mocking this man's death. But let me tell you something, man. Look, it's crazy. How can you not sympathize with a person who got murdered in front of their wife and children? It just doesn't make logical sense to me. There's no way I'm going to be out here celebrating anybody who I don't agree with death. I'm not going to do that. Look, people have shown me how, you know, how low down dirt they are, man, during this entire thing with Charlie Kirk. And the funny thing is, even though he said what he said, they're so blind and so numb to even find some sort of, you know, love in their heart to say, you know what, I didn't agree with this guy, but that crap wasn't right. I hated him, but that crap wasn't right. People don't even have that in their heart.
Joe Biden said white supremacy was the biggest domestic terror threat.
Which, of course, is absurd. The statistics don't bear that out. But if you look at what the Biden administration did against the phantom threat of white supremacy, we actually need to take some of the lessons and say, if there is funding sources that is going for this stuff, if you're an NGO and you're actually funding riots and other kinds of political violence, why wouldn't we go after that? Why wouldn't we cut off those funding sources? And why wouldn't we prosecute people who engage in violence? It's interesting, Jesse. The people who are saying this is Gestapo stuff, they're calling us Nazis for saying that if you're funding or supporting left-wing violence, you ought to pay consequences for it. It really makes you think that the left has not done any of the soul searching it has to do to actually deal with political violence in this country.
I'm gonna say this. I disagree with JD Vance on, look, white supremacy and anybody involved in that, they should be treated like terrorist groups. Any white nationalists, as they will call themselves, they should be treated as a terrorist group. Now, I agree with them when he says, you know, what we're facing right now is really the biggest threat. Because right now, to tell you the truth, these radical lefties, they're dangerous, especially the trans community. We got to start looking into our kids, man. Start monitoring your kids from an early age. Because once they get involved in certain groups, it's almost like there's no coming back. Start monitoring your kids from an early age, who they're hanging out with, what groups they're in on social media. You know, keep a check on them, man. This all starts from the home.
Jasmine Crockett says, yeah, she calls people Hitler, but it doesn't mean she's responsible for any violence that happened.
Y'all hear that? This is Jasmine Crockett. This is a person who's supposed to be one of the leaders in the Democratic Party. What was I saying earlier, y'all? What was I saying earlier? She said the most egregious stuff about Donald Trump. Nobody should have an issue with that because I'm just speaking my mind. I'm just saying how I feel. But as soon as Charlie Kirk expresses himself, it's a problem. Just because he's not a part of the Democratic Party. You see what I'm talking about? The double standard here? Jasmine Crockett, the worst of the worst. You know what? I'm just going to shake my head. But let's keep watching.
Well, I'd ask Jasmine Crockett, what is it that you want people to do when you call them Nazis? What is it that you want them to do when you call them fascists? What is the proper response when you say that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and Charlie Kirk are threatening your safety? What do you expect people to do? This rhetoric is completely out of control, and it's part of this entire network of violence that exists on the far left. You dehumanize your political opponents. You fund paid activists to go and harass them and terrorize them. We've had a White House senior staffer just in the past week who has had actual representatives of the Democratic Party going around passing leaflets trying to get his neighbors to harass him and showing people where he lives, where his wife lives, where his young family lives. If that's not political violence, if that's not political harassment, I don't know what the term means.
That's we're going to get to Barack. Let me rewind this part. Look, that's political, that's inciting violence. You see what they did? They're telling where these people live so people could go there. And I'm telling you, if you're a Democrat, you are a part of a terrorist organization. I don't think anybody right now really understand what's going on in the Democratic Party. They are gone, y'all. I used to be a Democrat, and I woke up. Let's hear about Barack Obama.
Barack Obama says your White House is dividing the country, and you're exploiting Kirk's death to attack Democrats.
We're not exploiting Charlie Kirk's death to do anything except for achieve justice. And I think if Barack Obama, I haven't seen that comment, Jesse, but if he said that, that's absolutely disgusting. What we're trying to do is understand how young people are getting radicalized and who is funding all of these efforts at radicalization. We saw this in the summer of 2020. Now, thank God that wasn't primarily, actually over 20 people died in the riots in the summer of 2020. That is political terrorism. But it's not just the people who are killing the cops. It's not just the people who are engaging and throwing the Molotov cocktails and in the riots. Where was the money coming from? Who was organizing this violent activity? That is not going after Democrats unless, by implication, you're saying every single Democrat is involved in planning political violence.
We're going to stop it right there. I saw the interview with Barack Obama. If you notice, to my Democratic friends, my conservative friends out there, have you not noticed that not one single, major member or prominent member of the Democratic Party actually came out and condemned the death of Charlie Kirk? Have you not noticed that? Not one of them came out and said, hey, this is not what we represent. This is not what we represent. None of them came out and condemned the death of, Charlie Kirk. And it's just sad. And I watched the video, I watched the interview with Barack Obama, and it's almost like when they asked him about Charlie Kirk, it's almost like it was hard for him to say, he sympathized with the family and so forth. And I'm sitting there watching it, and it's almost, it seems as if he wanted to, jump around the question. Like he didn't want to answer it. Y'all go take a look at it. He hop, skipped, and jumped around it, and until he actually, gave an answer and so forth. And then guess what he did? Brought it full circle around back to the Republican Party. Like I said, you will know who's who when certain happenings happen. You will know who is who. Just like we're seeing who the Democrat Party really is, who the liberals are. We're seeing who they really are. An evil group of people. I'm glad I left that party because I can't associate myself with evil people like those. Until next time, see you in the next video. Peace.